Welcome, party people. This is James A. Hurst, internationally tolerated screenwriter and story expert, and welcome to the first video in this video series, Write Dialogue Like a Boss. This first video is all about how to write dialogue that hides exposition. But before we get started, if you want to dial up your dialogue skills, you want to grab my free companion PDF, Write Dialogue Like a Boss. Copy the link in the description or go to jamesahurst.com/dialogue to get your free copy and start writing dialogue like a boss. I want to make the first episode in the series about exposition because it's the skill that I see most emerging writers really struggle to master. So in this video, I'm going to share my top 5 tips for hiding exposition. Let's get this done. So think about what happens when you quarrel with someone you love. Doesn't matter whether it's your best friend or your boyfriend or your girlfriend, you always become that person's personal historian of shame.
He tells me he likes it better here.
He tells you because he knows it's what you want to hear.
He tells me you're on the phone all the time. You don't even play with him.
You know, it's not pretty, but this is typical human behavior, right? When we argue with someone we know really well, we tend to dig into their past and dredge up old wounds, past grievances, and key facts. So this is an incredibly useful expositional tool for writers. That's why my first tip for writing dialogue that masks exposition is to drape it in conflict. When done right, the audience doesn't even notice all the facts being revealed because they're too caught up in the moment. Let's take a look at this technique being used in the pilot for The Bear.
Don't be rude and start doing a million things like a smart ass. I don't ever have time to take care of your mom for 6 Don't you
It went by pretty fast, but Richie just said he's been taking care of Carm's mom for 6 months.
I got all kinds of receipts from my divorce lawyer.
So apparently Richie's going through a divorce.
Backing up because all the time I'm spent trying to put your family back together because you're too much of a to come home.
Now we learned that Carm stayed away for 6 months after his brother's death, leaving Richie to pick up the pieces.
This is your brother's house, okay? Yeah, remember? I was running it fine without you.
Learned a couple things here, that this restaurant belonged to Carm's brother Michael, and that Richie was in charge before Carm returned.
Why didn't you leave it to you then?
That's a lot of information to get out in one scene, but you don't notice because you're caught up in the conflict between Carm and Richie. So when you write conflict like this, you're turning the audience into, like, I don't know, the jury on a trial. You're encouraging them to mentally jot down everything being said so that they can make a judgment. And effectively, you're filling their brains with exposition, and they don't even notice because they're so caught up in the drama. You can pretty much get away with anything in a script so long as it's entertaining, even exposition. The audience might even know that you're spoon-feeding them facts, but they won't mind because you're having fun with it and making it entertaining. In the book Save the Cat, they call this technique the Pope in the Pool, but I like to call the technique Margot in the Bubblebath. Why? Take a look at this clip from the 2015 movie The Big Short and see if you can figure it out.
So the banks started filling these bonds with riskier and riskier mortgages. Thank you, Banjo. That way, they can keep that profit machine churning, right? By the way, these risky mortgages are called subprime.
See what I mean? You either don't notice that Margot's dumping out exposition, or you do notice and you don't really care because it's Margot Robbie in the bubble bath having fun and you're here for it. Like the song says.
For a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
But there's more to this technique than just putting sugar on the medicine. Ugh. There's an ironic wink to this, a cheeky playfulness that people appreciate because you're letting them in on the trick. Another example of this technique can be found in Jurassic Park. The storytellers needed the audience to understand DNA replication, but instead of forcing the characters to explain it in some dry way, they put the characters on a ride.
A DNA strand, like me, is a blueprint for building a living thing.
So the takeaway here is that sometimes the best way to educate the audience is to make it entertaining. In other words,
For a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down.
there's nothing that kills the vibe in your movie more than a big old stinky exposition dump. Some of the stinkiest expo dumps in recent memory can be found in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. While reviewers raved about the action set pieces, many also complained about what ABC News called a heavy-handed exposition dump. Check out this scene where some really good actors have to get through some pretty ridiculous dialogue.
Gabriel represents another interested party. In fact, this party was arranged by that interested party.
You could even say that this party is that interested party.
What the fuck does that even mean?
You've no idea the power I represent. Thousands of quadrillions of computations per millisecond, subtly manipulating the minds of billions, while parsing every possible cause and effect, every scenario, however implausible, into a very real map of a most probable next.
Poor Issei Morales is doing his best, but he's stuck playing what we call a Jake the Explainer, a character who's forced by the plot into explaining everything. Not only do these Jake the Explainer scenes stop your movie in the tracks, but they're also, ironically, incredibly ineffective at exposition. Think about it. The goal of exposition is to give your audience context, but that context only works if they can actually remember it. Your audience only has so much short-term memory that they're willing to give up, so you need to think about pacing and spacing your exposition. Imagine that your reader is like our juggling friend here. The juggler can only keep so many balls in the air at one time. What happens if you give them too many balls to juggle? For me, my writing improved so much the day that I realized that the audience is giving me their attention as a gift in good faith, and that if I taxed their attention by throwing too much shit at them all at once, that they'll just start to tune out. So remember, it's not your reader's job to remember the details. It's your job to make it easy for them to remember. One of the most common ways to mask exposition is by using the new guy character, someone who's stepping into a world or situation for the first time. In The Matrix, Neo, whose name literally means new, acts as the audience surrogate, and we experience this mind-bending new world through his eyes. Whoa. Like us, Neo is a stranger in this strange land, so he asks the questions we want answers to, making the exposition feel natural and tied to the story.
What are you talking about? What is happening to me?
You are the one, Neo.
Word of warning, this newbie trick is so commonly used that it can become trite or cliched if you don't do it right. So don't lean in too hard to the newbie trick, because readers will bust you for it. My favorite trick for hiding exposition is to make the information difficult for the hero to find out. This introduces a layer of conflict, but there's more to this than adding conflict. It's about making the information a goal or objective for your hero to attain. It turns what could be a big old expo dump into a game of cat and mouse. It makes the hero or villain a detective in the scene, and it makes getting the information their objective. So when your character has to fight to get answers, the audience roots for them. They get caught up in it. And every piece of exposition that your hero gets, it feels like a win, because the person who's holding the information doesn't want to give it up. They need to be coaxed, cajoled, or coerced into telling the hero. One of the best examples of this technique can be found in the movie Silence of the Lambs. In this scene, Hannibal Lecter pulls Clarice's backstory out of her, little by little.
Why did you leave that ranch?
Doctor, we don't have any more time for any of this now.
But we don't reckon time the same way, do we, Clarice? This is all the time you'll ever have.
Later. Now, please listen to me. We've only got 5...
No. I will listen now. After your father's murder, you were orphaned. You were 10 years old. You went to live with cousins on a sheep and horse ranch in Montana. And
one morning, I just ran away.
not just, Clarice. What set you off? You started at what time?
Early. Still dark.
Then something woke you, didn't it? Was it a dream? What was it?
I heard a strange noise.
What was it?
It was screaming.
You see, Clarice doesn't want to give it up because opening up means giving him power over her. That tension, the fight to keep control, makes every reveal feel true and earned. The audience has no idea you're revealing necessary backstory because the information is a prize to be wrested out of the other character. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, when is James going to stop doing this Hannibal Lecter impersonation? Well, how about right now? You're also probably thinking, sure, this technique works in a thriller, but will it work in something like a drama? In the baseball drama Moneyball, Billy Beane, played by Brad Pitt, is talking to a rival GM about possible trades when he notices that Peter Brand, a young exec played by Jonah Hill, is quietly nixing his offers. Brand knows something, and Beane wants to know what that is.
What happened in that room?
I'm not quite sure what you're asking me, Mr. Bean.
What did you tell Bruce?
Just told Bruce I like Garcia.
You like Garcia. Why?
Brand is reluctant to speak in this setting, so Beane coaxes him away from the office.
Okay, people who run ball clubs, they think in terms of buying players. Your goal shouldn't be to buy players. Your goal should be to buy wins. And in order to buy wins, you need to buy runs.
This scene in the parking lot is really a massive expo dump, but by adding a layer of subterfuge, you don't even notice it. The writers turned this potentially dry lecture about stats into a tense bit of espionage. If there's one thing you take away from this video, it's that whenever you've got some backstory or exposition to get out, ask yourself, is there any way that I can hide it from my characters so that they have to work to find it out? Because that's the best hack that I can think of to hide exposition. Don't forget to download my free PDF, Write Dialogue Like a Boss, by heading to jamesahurst.com/dialogue. And be sure to remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next video in this series, which is going to be all about mastering the art of banter. This is James A. Hurst for Screenwright. And remember, you're the only writer you've got, so be kind to yourself. Happy writing.